up, fam? Today I had on Daniel Scharff, founder and CEO of Startup CPG. Daniel's journey from launching high-growth brands to strategic roles at industry leaders like Mars Chocolate and Machu Picchu Energy has uniquely positioned him as a leader in the consumer packaged goods world. At Startup CPG, Daniel leads the largest community of emerging CPG brands in the world with 20,000 Slack members. They empower entrepreneurs with resources, media coverage, and peer support. We talked about so many things CPG, guys. We talked about the main ingredients, no pun intended, needed for success and the major pitfalls that many CPG brands fall into. We talked about branding, product placement, purpose, to fund, not to fund, and much more. I want to give a shout out to the sponsor of today's show, The Kin, which is a membership network, accelerator, and workspace for conscious entrepreneurs. I'm a big fan of it, and I encourage you to check it out at thekin.co. Guys, if you like this show, please share it with a homie or on social media, tag me, definitely subscribe. It really means the world to me, and you're helping to be a part of this consciousness revolution that we are experiencing. Daniel, welcome to the show, brother. Thanks for being on.
I'm pumped to be here. Thank you.
Hell yeah, man. I like to start my shows by asking you, what was your last oh shit moment? And that could be anything. It could be like a good thing, it could be a bad thing, anything you want. Whatever comes to mind first, last oh shit.
I think any founder will relate to this. My oh shit moments are often, they happen a lot of the time. And you can have 1 week where you're on top of the world. Everything that I'm doing is turning to gold. And then you wake up the next week and you're just thinking, is this even going to work? Am I a fool for even trying this? Is this going to crash and burn? And everybody's going to see that. And so I think the oh shit moments for me, in the past with different businesses, I could point to something specific that went wrong. And then, oh my God, my life has turned upside down while I try to fix this. But now I think the path that I'm on now, fortunately, I just haven't had so many of those specific oh shit moments. But it's more of just, I don't know. Some days you wake up feeling just doubting yourself. And I think the journey that you're on, which I think any founder would relate to. No, there's no founder out there that's like, we just started it and it always went well. I mean, that's the one. If you read any of the books that are out about like the Elon biography or Steve Jobs or anything, or watch any of the like WeWork documentaries, they all almost died at some point. Like all of the businesses were on the brink of failure so many times. Nothing always just went well. So I think just the usual oh shit.
That's good for people to hear because I assume that most people that listen to this episode, a lot of them be involved with in the CPG world, and that's a lot of the people that I work with and brands that I work with too. So it's great to hear that because you have an amazing company that's doing really well. You guys have a massive community. So for you to still have those moments when you're waking up and like, is this going to crash and burn? I get it. I totally get it. Because sometimes a few key things, if they all go wrong, it can all go to shit. You know what I mean? But you just got to trust and believe. Daniel, I don't know if it's just me, and I don't have the data, and obviously I'll ask you about the data, but it feels like over the last 5 years, like new CPG brands have exploded. Like I can't go to the store without walking down the aisle. Like if I go, like I love coffee. I'm a huge coffee fan. I go check out the coffee aisle and there's like 3 new brands every time I go and I buy coffee every week. It's like, is that a thing? Like, is it?
Are you talking about bagged coffee or RTD canned? Okay, bagged.
Like with coffee, I've just seen so many, and just pretty much most. Like if you're gonna go get like chips, like there's a new chip brand every time you go to the store. Like it just feels that the last 5 years have exploded with new brands. Why is this the case?
So first, let me ask: is there another industry that you're more familiar with where that isn't happening, like in tech or media or anything else? Are you seeing the same thing of just explosion of new companies?
That's a really good question. I feel that from my perception, I experience it a lot more in CPG. I see it more, and maybe it's because I pay more attention to it. Maybe there's a bias there, and I love design and aesthetics, and so I observe brands and I look at every aspect of it. So I enjoy that. I'm walking down the store and I'm looking at these new companies and I'm looking at the branding and I'm looking at their purpose and what are they talking about and all that stuff. So maybe in other industries, I'm just not noticing it as much.
No, I think you're right. I think it is, and I think it's interesting to think about why. So if I rewind my career, I finished business school in 2009. At that point, most people were still going into banking or consulting, and then a smaller number fortunate to get jobs in hedge funds or private equity, that kind of stuff. And just a few people were going into tech and or entrepreneurship. The person in 2009 coming out of a good business school taking a risk on Google was like, "Oh, that is a risk seeker,"
Yeah.
And so that really started to change in the years after I left, getting into 2012, 2013, 2014. I think more people started going into tech and then also probably considering entrepreneurship in tech, especially because, it's things like Google that make people have the appetite for entrepreneurship in general. You see those returns. I want to get some of those returns. Maybe I'll try something on my own.
Right. At that time, there was like a new SaaS company every time you turn around.
Yeah. And Google still felt like a startup then. And to some people, I think it feels like a startup now, even though it's one of the biggest companies in the world. Right. And then I think, so nobody was going into food entrepreneurship.
Right.
My year. There was one guy the year below who was just, I really applaud him. His name is Jamari Pinkard, and he started a Hella Bitters brand. But It's just super interesting. He was just out there actually doing it. Such a cool example. Fast forward now, there are a lot of people coming out of business school starting food and beverage brands. They're coming out of top tier programs, Stanford, Harvard, Wharton, and that's what they want to do. Overall, the entrepreneurship trend is way up in general. I think because number one, I think people just see the opportunities like we were talking about and the returns people are getting. And I think number two, just an increasing interest in the rewards that come from having your own business, not just about money, but I don't necessarily want to go do this kind of vanilla banking or consulting things. I'm not sure I want to go somewhere where someone's just going to shit on me for a bunch of years.
Totally.
While I pay my dues. Maybe I'll just go and do my own thing right now. And, even if you're not building $1 billion brand, if you can build something sustainable, the experience is fantastic.
Yeah.
And the learning is so accelerated.
And social media has changed the game for that, right? Because now younger people are consuming content from mentors that they wouldn't have otherwise consumed. They're suggesting go into entrepreneurship, try this, try that, fail, whatever. And it's interesting, in my opinion. I think that that's incredibly positive most of the time. I also think that there is probably a percentage of people that do it just because they feel like that's the cool thing to do, and maybe it's just they're not built for it, but that's fine. They can just try, and maybe they realize they're not built for it. There is an interesting amount of people, though, doing it, even though maybe they're not really that passionate about it, because that is those are the people we look up to now, right? So the founders and CEOs of big companies are kind of the cool kids in town now.
I think that's right. And if you know somebody who has a beverage brand, that's so cool.
Right.
And I think that's why I wanted to work in CPG, consumer packaged goods, initially, because I just thought those products were cool. I thought it was cool to go to 7-Eleven and see all the brands, and they were exciting. And a lot has changed for me about which brands I think are cool.
Totally.
Not necessarily the kind of big old crappy ones that I think don't innovate much. Now I love the early ones, but I think everybody shares that feeling. That's why Shark Tank is so popular. Because and it's relatable. I could launch something, and I have ideas for things. And so I think it's very relatable. And then the last point I think that you just brought up is the accessibility. Like with social media and being accessible to everybody, I think the barriers have come way down for being able to start a food or beverage product. I think people understood better what it was like to launch a tech product because they had seen it happen out there in the world. We all kind of watched Google grow. And I think I was 16 in high school when we all were starting to use Google a little bit, and what is this cool new small thing taking on Microsoft? Or I don't even remember what we all used.
What was your AIM name?
Almost too embarrassing to say here, but I'm going to say it anyways. And I don't even know why, but it was like Mulan, the movie, but it was Mulan.
Oh, that's hilarious. Mine was Seba Dank. I said it.
God.
That's hilarious.
That was, I feel, all right, just give me a high five
right
now for us. Just admitting
there
that here publicly. All right. So, and then I also had a handle because I was in those early days in a lot of the chat rooms where people were trading software and stuff. And so my handle there was cool with a Q.
It's so funny. Like, kids don't even know ASL. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Age, sex, location. That's
Yeah.
what you had to answer when you came to the chat room. That's so funny.
So, yeah.
Throwback.
So the barriers have come down. I think one, because people see the businesses being built, and things like Shark Tank have really made it very glamorous.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, you may know somebody who's a food or beverage entrepreneur and have learned from them. And also, I think communities like mine just take away a lot of the mystery, where if you're just like, yeah, how would I do that? That's actually the content level that we aim for. And so we start from the beginning. And anytime I'm doing one of our podcasts, Startup CPG podcast, or one of our webinars, I assume the lowest common denominator for level of knowledge. And I always have, whatever I write, whatever I publish, present, I want my mom to be able to understand it.
That's
and
great.
I do actually send it to her to make sure she can follow
great.
it. Because, otherwise, like when you get too technical and people kind of throwing around terms just to kind of show that they know them, I'm allergic to that stuff. I'm allergic to the consulting language. And,
Interesting.
the just like strip it down to its core. It's a way easier place to have discussion.
Great. Yeah, it's a great approach. So kind of going back to the, there's so many brands. My, natural instinct to say is there's no room. Is there really room for all of those brands to succeed? Like, is there a percentage of failure in terms of startup CPGs? That's scary.
There's not room for all of them to succeed. In fact, very few will. So the data point that most people in my industry are familiar with is, I think there was a study done by Coca-Cola that said 2% of brands will reach 10 million in sales.
Okay.
That's a very low number if you're if you're betting whether or not
in yearly sales,
reaching 10 million in annual sales.
In annual sales.
So that's a big number. To get to that, probably, you might have to be in, 10,000 stores and doing really well in those stores, or maybe even, maybe more. And depending on your price
D2C,
point,
you'd have to be absolutely crushing direct to consumer or Amazon sales or something to be.
And it takes a lot of money to get there. I remember watching Mark Cuban, I think, on one of the Shark Tanks where he was talking to a beverage brand, said, for me to make my money, you're going to have to get to 50 million. And for you to get to 50 million in sales, it's going to take you $30 to $50 million that you'll have to raise. Yeah. And so that's why he didn't love the beverage category. I think, pushing back on that, I would say, so I was the CEO of a beverage company called Machu Picchu Energy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I did that for 3 years. I started it with
Beach House Cowork.
Yeah, we did actually work out of there for a little bit while we were waiting for the headquarters to open.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I wonder if I met you randomly like there, because we were there for a while too. My agency.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
That's
so
funny.
we originally started the company out of Miami, which is where the founder was based. And then once the product was in market, moved here to open the headquarters. And then the headquarters, which is across the street from Beach House Cowork.
Right.
So while we were waiting to
that's still there. I see it on the wall. Painted on the wall.
Yeah. So while we were building it out, then we started out of Beach House Cowork with that's Simon, and
that's in Santa Monica for listeners out there.
And I loved it there.
That's funny.
Yeah, very cool place.
Cool.
I just always assumed that we would get there, and I don't know. They weren't there when I left, but definitely getting into seven figures, and I saw very clearly the path to getting to that next level. Because, really breaking the seal is the very hard thing to do. Can I get into good accounts early on? Can I get good velocity at those accounts and start building a groundswell? Because one door always leads to another if you make it in the industry. Taking an early success, letting the whole world know about it, like on LinkedIn, that gets you additional distribution. When you have more distribution in the stores, that gives you impressions with people. Like, people need to see your product a bunch of times in stores. That's as good as doing digital marketing to people as well, just having the physical presence there. And then over time, your velocities start to grow.
Store impressions. Yeah. Interesting. Just to think about that, right? Because I'm in the digital world 95% of the time, right? So we're talking about impressions and all right, just in general, top of funnel, right? So top of funnel in a physical standpoint, right?
Where do you shop?
See that. Where do I shop? I cross between Trader Joe's, Whole Foods, and just like random things. I go to Erewhon just.
I knew you were going to wait to say
just
Erewhon.
For the hot bar.
Just admit
just go for the hot bar.
Just admit you go to Erewhon,
dude. I'm not going to pay $14 for the same exact pasture raised eggs that I'm buying at the store for $7. You know what I mean?
Hey guys, I just want to remind you, if you want to find more content like this, you can visit SebastianNam.com. That's Sebastian, naum.com. You can also get a ton of other marketing resources from myself and my agencies, ranging from SEO to social media, influencer marketing, branding, web development, and more. Again, that's sebastiannaum.com. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of the show.
But it is a good lunch date spot.
Yeah, it sure is. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so pretty interesting because, and also I think those impressions are worth different amounts. If you're a marketer paying for those, the impression that you get for the Erewhon consumer is very valuable, and they know that, and it's not cheap to work with them.
Yeah.
But so if I go and I can do it. I've done demos at Erewhon with my product there. I've done demos at big grocery stores in Texas. I can run a demo at Erewhon. I can spend probably 2 hours there and sell maybe 30 to 40 cans of product.
Okay.
That means I'm probably sampling for, I don't know, maybe 100 people during that time.
Yeah.
And I have all the energy in the world to do this, but it is exhausting to do it with Erewhon shoppers because it's going to be somebody who they look like what you think they look like. They've got they're so LA. They're like they're a caricature of an LA person.
Right.
And they come in and they're like, they scrunch their nose up and look at the ingredients and they're like, did you think about using this other thing like ashwagandha that I'm using right now? And they'll tell you a bunch of things you should do with your business. And then they may try the product, and probably a third of them are just going to say no to anything that isn't basically like water or just straight kale or something, right? Like or like an aloe vera leaf that they just buy and walk out with. So like probably there are a certain percentage of them that just will say no outright.
Sure.
And then some of them you'll talk to for a bit, and then I don't know. And then maybe a third of them like finally come around on your product. But those are super high value people because it's Erewhon and because of the brand that they've built.
Yeah.
Those people are actually very influential. They're people who have a certain kind of lifestyle. They have a certain kind of income.
Right.
It's kind of an identity place. So if you are somebody who is, in the scene or influential, because Erewhon's influential, you're probably shopping there.
Yeah.
And then often you're maybe sharing what you discover there with your influential friends as well.
And a lot of people are going to value that opinion.
Yeah. And there are celebrities in there. And I mean, I had an experience where my demo person got a product to, I think to I don't know if it was Hailey Bieber or like, I don't know, somebody in Selena Gomez's circle. And then it ended up in Selena Gomez's fridge, and they posted a picture of her fridge, and the product was front and center in her fridge. And that was all because we were in Erewhon and we were demoing in Erewhon and then the demo person knew to give them a can, just say, please take this and try it.
Those things that,
So that stuff you can't put a price on when it happens because, the right coverage of something can make all the difference. So, those impressions are important, and they help you over time. And so, I think I always assumed that I would get there to that successful stage because I will work my ass off and I know how to do that. I will never rest until I've contacted every single retail buyer around the country and made my pitch and used everything that I have at my disposal, every data point. Every last win, I'll publish that on LinkedIn and make sure everybody knows about the wins that I'm getting and try to build up the FOMO. I will spend the time building really compelling data stories, which you must do. You must lobby for yourself using data because that's the language buyers speak. And so, I think we were on the path to get there. So I would never doubt a founder who has, at least a decent product and knows how to have extreme grit and a good strategy, and can be really passionate about their product. I think they can get there. So that 2% number for me is kind of deceiving. I also think that that's not the only measure of success, because if you told me, hey, you can go and kind of have a life that you hate a lot working at a big management consulting firm where everybody pressures you and you're accountable to the client, and even when you're a successful partner, you probably have a pretty tough lifestyle and you're on phone calls all Sunday night. Or you can start your own thing, some product that you love, and you can work on this for 5 or 10 years and have a livable salary and build something and have a chance at great success.
Right.
But at least get all of the joy from doing your own thing and having the impact that you want to have in the world
100%.
And build things and be a job creator probably. And the challenges are very real also because, man, if some product starts going bad or leaking or something and it's your product, your day is ruined, right? You are, that is up to you, and it's very scary. You're not just a cog in the wheel anymore when it's on you. But ultimately, the highs I found are just so high when it's you and you're so close to the product.
Yeah, so you don't need the 10 million in revenue to still have something successful and be fulfilled with your CPG brand. But, let's go after, the big stuff. Obviously, like you said, you want to be able to have that shot, and that's what you're going after. There's so many categories, right? You touched on a lot of them. You touched on marketing, you touched on branding. We're talking about platforms and distributions, leadership, funding. I mean, there's so many things in theory for this recipe to be perfect. What is like the most crucial if we had to really, it's really difficult because I know there's not one thing, right? But out of those, like what cannot fail out of those you think for the whole project not to fail?
A good product, I guess.
Right.
Yeah, good product
Ultimately.
market fit. I've seen founders I don't think are very good be successful with a product that just hit. And it was because it was either just an incredibly superior product or because it was just right for the time,
right,
or because there was just some unique combination of the branding and the product that just really resonated. And like kind of with picking stocks, like you can know everything in the world and make your choices really diligently, and very few fund managers have managed to beat the S&P average year over year, but also just some
little bit of luck.
just some very random people out there taking big bets, and there are a bunch of people who got crypto rich. So there are for sure examples of people out there who are just going to get it right. But I think that's pretty hard to plan for. I think
Absolutely.
The thing that you can plan for is really understanding the opportunity that's out there, working very diligently to come up with a product that gives a great experience on taste. That's the most important thing at that stage.
Yeah.
Having branding that's going to appeal to people, that's going to be very simple, like not, making your product look like a NASCAR car with all the different claims all over it, like too busy. And then just working your absolute tail off after that.
Yeah, absolutely. Fun fact, crypto, Bitcoin, and Ether hitting almost an all-time high today since 2021.
Wow.
Great.
Right.
Yeah. I am a bit biased on this, but I'm glad you brought up branding, right? So I'm a bit biased because at Go Global Agency, our agency, we work with purpose-driven CPG and health and wellness brands, and we build brands from the ground up. And we also do all of their marketing. But the branding side of it is what I find the most fun. It's actually the least profitable from an agency standpoint, but it is the most fun, and to me, it's the most important because branding is like that first impression you have a lot of the times, whether you're going on a date or if you're going into a job interview, and that first impression, it's what I feel immediately when I pick something up. All of it, right? The way it's put together, the fonts, the colors, the simplicity, the maybe how is it communicating its values, and that causes an initial connection for me with the brand. So how important do you think that is? Because I think a lot of the times with these startups, they're going, hey, I'm going to focus on my product and I'm going to focus on sales, but I'm going to leave branding or brand way behind because it's not really something that I know about. How important do you think branding actually is?
I mean, I think before we get into that, because you brought up dating and branding, tell me about your experience. What is the brand that you're presenting when you go on a date? And what first impression are you trying to give them?
I love the switch that just happened. I love the switch of the interview.
Anybody listening wanted to know that also.
You know what's funny about this? So thank you for the question. When most of the time, well, what I've come to, not most of the time, but later in life, what I decided that I would do on first dates is that I would typically only rotate within a few certain outfits that completely feel representative of me. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, all right, like actually probably wearing what I wear. Black tee, I'm going to wear these types of shoes, whatever, because it represents, I feel, what do they call it? Like your Charlie Brown or something like that?
Okay.
Have you heard of that?
This is very interesting. And so if we could just switch roles for a second here. All right. So for anybody who's only listening to this and not watching it, Sebastian's a very good looking guy. He's in shape. He's got his trendy black tee, and he's got a couple different chains on as well. It's a very good look. It's a very good look overall.
Thank you.
So is this a kind of outfit that you would wear to a date?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what does it say about you?
Wow, you really turned it around on me. It says that simple, clean, a little edgy.
All right, I'll take it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. You're very brand consistent, like the grooming, but a little bit of edge on the
Little edge,
jewelry,
but clean.
and okay, cool. Yes, but clean and like together.
Yeah, yeah. Like you go to my house, it's gonna be insanely organized. Like I grew up with two Virgo parents. Like everything's clean and neat and no clutter, but also a little edgy. A little bit of both, you know.
All right, that makes me want to clutter up the desk a little bit just to mess with you. But okay,
Give me a panic attack.
All right, so back
Wait,
to
hold on. What's your your first date outfit?
Oh no! So back to CPG. No, I mean, I'm not very good at it in general, I would say. So I think, gosh, when was the last time I even went on a date? Yeah, probably. I also have a very standard go-to on the kind of things that I'm going to wear. And I think it's the same kind of stuff that I wear to work, which maybe is why I'm still single.
Startup CPG hoodie.
I think actually probably the same is true with work. Is like I actually am not very good at branding personally.
Really?
And probably that's why, I'm not doing a very good job.
Startup CPG has good branding.
Yeah, thank you. I think so. Like with Machu Picchu, for example, it, wasn't my company. I was the CEO. I was hired in as CEO to start the company from scratch. But the branding came from the founder. The vision came from him, the name of the company. And, I think I did a good job of like making sure we were working with the right agency that I thought would do a good job and for like to elaborate the vision in the right way. But yeah, I mean, along the way, there were so many marketing decisions to make, and I'm so glad I was not the one making them because number one, like I don't really care about that stuff as much. It's just not as exciting to me.
Yeah.
When it can be very, I don't know, like maybe not obtuse, but just like not so tangible. And number two, like the brand did not come from me, and so I did not know I wasn't as good at it. Like I would talk about it one way and it was just wrong, and like that for me is kind of frustrating because like
right.
Okay, yeah, I didn't totally get it, but. Startup CPG was a lot easier to guide branding on and know what I wanted because it does come from me. That like I'm the one who had the idea to have this group. I'm still the one who propels the vision forward and decides who we're going to be. And I think I wouldn't say we have classical marketing. We don't have a marketing plan that we execute through the year. Fortunately, most of the stuff that happens with us is very organic, but our marketing is who we are every day. And it's all of the activities that we do, and it's all of the value that we provide to people. It definitely helps that we do have pretty cool branding that came from my friend Andre Meca, based out of Portugal, Ulsa Design. He could definitely hit him up on Instagram. He does very epic stuff. He did the Startup CPG logo. He did my band logo also,
nice.
which is amazing. So definitely hit him up.
Well, the difference there, too, though, is that Startup CPG is a community. It's not an actual CPG product itself. So it's, right, there's a little bit of a difference there, right? So if we're talking about branding for a CPG product where you're picking something up and grabbing it and looking at it, you probably have to be more. You guys are more community-focused, right? It's more about what the value of the community is getting, right? That's really what it's all about.
Which I think is just much more in my wheelhouse.
Right.
Also, because, I don't know. I wouldn't be very good at choosing branding for even a new product that I created. Like, I need help on that stuff. I need other people to look at it and help me decide what I think.
But incredibly important, though, for those that are launching a brand to give that attention.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think, for Startup CPG, it's just much more natural because it happened over time. And I mean, our initial branding when we were even just SF CPG, I look back on it now, it was from Fiverr or something in the original design. The first time I ever saw it, I was like, damn, that's cool. And now I'm like, that was horrible. Please don't let anyone see what that was. But then, we worked with a good designer and got what I think is a very iconic design. I don't feel like 5 years later we need any kind of a refresh. He's a very systems-oriented designer also, so created a logo that I think could scale very well and lend itself to other things that we'd expand into. And then, but yeah, I mean, again, the marketing, it mainly is about doing for us. And I mean, the marketing that we're doing is basically just sharing all the cool stuff that we're doing and making sure everybody hears about it. That's the most important thing, is like, I spend most of my day thinking about how to provide immense value to brands in our community. That is my business model, is because it's free for them. All I have to do is figure out how to help them in incredible ways. And that's building a community for them so that any single question that they have out there in the world, they can get an answer right away. And that is our biggest measure as a community, is if we look at our Slack channel with 20,000 people in it, does every single question get answered? And they really do, for the most part. If it's some very obscure thing, they might be able to stump 20,000 people. But for the most part, it's brand founders and experts in there who like to give the answers, and that happens right away. And then, the rest of the marketing is we create incredible opportunities. We do giveaways. We, have special opportunities to meet with retailers. And it's just about sharing, I would say, all of that on LinkedIn. And then when we do the thing, having great content that we also share, because it's really important for us as an organization that everybody has excitement about who we are and what we're doing. And that helps us plan even better activities. Every time we do something well, it levels us up. Every time we execute a great sponsor activation, every time we do an epic event, puts us on the next level. More people start hearing about it. I think, for the growth of our community, in the early days, it was very manual. It was like me at our first events walking around with a clipboard, writing down people's email addresses so that I could start building this in a scalable way, making sure we had, the ability to contact people. But today, after 5 years of just providing enormous value, it's not manual at all. The thing grows on its own. And I think it's like that for any business. Like, you will be fighting one by one in the early days. There is no recipe to go viral that you can count on. But what you can count on is do the work, build the business, try to get one person and then another person. And then eventually some of them will start telling their friends also. And then you get the users on your side, and they're the ones providing the engine for growth. And so now for our channel, for example, every week we have 200 people coming into the channel right now. And if I talk to them like, how'd you hear about this? They're just hearing about it from their friends.
Totally.
And I meet tons of people all across the country who say, I just tell everybody I meet to join your channel and listen to your podcast. And that's how you get that, next level exponential growth over time, just like you would for this leisure hydration drink that I'm drinking right now. Well, it sounds like an ad, but it's not. I just happen to bring this with me. But
that has like the little Kool-Aid guy on the bottom, no?
Yeah.
Is that a Kool-Aid brand?
It looks no. This is another startup I'm friends with.
Oh my gosh,
locally.
This is funny.
So this is a great product. It's a hydration drink. They're having incredible success, especially in
only 3 grams of added sugar.
Yeah, really nice and just delicious electrolytes. Hydration. That's a huge hydration.
Not a plug. Not a plug.
Yeah, well, it is a plug.
Well, a plug,
not a paid
non-paid plug.
Yeah. But they're getting into a lot of corporate accounts right now, which means the kitchen at Google, those kind of places.
Great. Those are great.
And that's huge because those guys were all using like plastic bottles, Coca-Cola products, and now those companies all have initiatives to get rid of all the plastics, and now they're finding more sustainable options.
And we'll get into that. We'll get into purpose and sustainability. First, I want to ask you, though, you have so much experience with so many different CPG brands, just tons of them. Do you see a common pitfall that when CPG brands are focusing too much on or investing too much on something, that's really a pitfall for them?
I mean, I guess a couple come to mind. So one is just not preparing yourself to do the work, because you need to be totally obsessed and prepared to be obsessed. And in your first year, especially if you're doing this like full time, you're not spending almost every waking minute like out there trying to hit retailers on LinkedIn and turn one yes into another yes. Like, the brand is going to stall out, because you need somebody who just goes crazy. Almost every business that's been successfully grown that you know of was done that way by crazy people who just were like so compelled to succeed that they did absolutely everything in their control to do it. I think, one thing is knowing.
Do you think you can do it if you're not obsessed?
I think that would be the exception. Is just like, some totally chill person who managed to
part-time, or it's a kind of side gig, side hustle situation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I do love the side hustle. I believe that, some founders who have been successful that way will say, no, the only way you can be successful is if you drop everything, quit your job, have no backup plan, and go all in. I don't believe that.
Yeah, I'm not in that school either.
No, I think I can tell you hundreds of people who started their business as a side hustle and worked on it in the late hours or whenever they could, the weekends. And then because they had a job with a nice salary, they had money to pay for the things that they're going to need. Because you do need things. You need good branding, right? They're like, how are you going to pay for that if you aren't even paying yourself? You don't have any money. Oh, okay, then maybe you have to raise money, and now you don't really own the company, and that's not going to be as fun. I really
do you
believe
have to raise?
People do this different ways. I personally have never actually raised money.
Okay.
Like I've gone on road shows and stuff, but like for my own business, Startup CPG is 100% mine. I don't plan on raising money for it. I don't want to be accountable to anybody.
Sure.
Like having anybody tell me what to do would make me crazy, and I've learned that about myself. So I'd rather just grow it slower and have 100% control. But that's only possible because for 5 years I did it on the side.
Mm-hmm.
You know, during the pandemic, like I don't have a wife and kids, so I had those extra cycles where I could just, nothing was going on. I just came home and worked all the time.
Yeah.
And so
Also depends maybe on the speed of growth that you're desiring or needing. Yeah.
Yeah. And if I was building this thing to spin it up and then try to sell it as quickly as possible, maybe taking VC money would make sense. And I think there are a lot of people out there who have offered it. But I don't want to give away a bunch of the company and then try to grow it and sell it. I don't need to. It's a great company. I love doing it. Mm-hmm. It's, I think, enough for me, just to get to do this and grow it in a really nice way, have a total control over it. And then, I don't want any.
Do you think that's different for a CPG product though, specifically? That may need that funding to try to get the word out, or maybe hire that salesperson to be calling,
I don't.
people a day.
So it is expensive. It takes a lot of cash. That's not like Startup CPG. We're not going to need the working capital the way a lot of those guys are. So I think there are very few companies that have managed to grow and be epic without ever having raised money. I think more likely, more often now you're seeing stories like Liquid Death. Right. Liquid Death that, everybody would say is on a crazy trajectory. I mean, they're raising hundreds of millions of dollars because they're not profitable, right? Like if you're not profitable,
especially with beverage, though, right? That's the thing with beverage. It's really tough to be profitable. It's
very tough. Yeah, the price points are low, especially for something like water, and so they have done an incredible job. I love it. I buy it, drink it, but it's tough because they're challenged on price point. They have a big can with a lot of water in it. Mm-hmm. There's only a certain amount people are willing to pay for that, especially on a regular basis. Like you can get the trial, but to get repeat purchase, price points are challenging. So they're raising a lot of money to try to fuel the growth of that business. And so who knows how much the founder owns of that business now. I can tell you, from my time at Just Egg, they've raised, I think, around $1 billion. And they had already raised maybe 120 to 200 when I joined it in 2016. Now, I think that's a different, maybe the founder didn't care so much, honestly, about the payout. I think he cared more about the impact on the world. But if he just kept raising money and diluting himself and kind of what he had in the company, and then probably having just a lot of stress, I know they had to clear the board out at one point and just spent so much time around raising money and everything. That guy probably will be richer than I ever will be, even through it. They're having tough times now, but you can always sell your share, secondary shares, and founders are able to do that. But I think for me, I don't want that life of just that much stress. Just having gone through it the last couple of years, being CEO of a company, and it was very stressful for me. The highs are very high, but the stress is real. I felt it in my heart and in my throat and in my head all the time. And actually, now that I'm doing this full time, I see my friends from the industry, and almost all of them look at me and they're like, wow, you are very chilled out. You seem really different now. Yeah. And just because, I'm not so crazy and trying to, make other people happy with the momentum of the business. Yeah. So, anyways, I really believe in the side hustle and having the chance to actually do that as a brand. And then maybe it's not that you may never have to raise money, but at least by the time you do it, maybe now you've built out the point where you have good branding and you have product market fit and you've proven some things, maybe in a retailer, maybe on Amazon. So now that valuations are pretty brutal, instead of raising at a $2 million valuation, maybe you can wait and raise at a $5 million valuation, which means that, $500K that you need to actually buy inventory or whatever, instead of giving away 25% of your company, you can give away 10% of it. Right. Yeah,
that's good advice.
So I love that approach. There are plenty of people who, have been more successful than I have who may disagree with me, but yeah.
So it's got to really take a special type of person and personality to raise money and be able to still kind of not have that pressure, like that you were talking about, that pressure on your shoulders, pressure in your heart, that you're sort of answering and you're indebted to somebody that's giving you money. So that's why I actually like that approach that you were saying of being like, hey, get something going first. You can still raise, but you're giving away a little bit less so that you don't feel that you're so indebted and also not giving away so much of your company.
Yeah. And I really am a fan of the side hustle also, but I think a lot of us are very ambitious people, and we're going to be ambitious in our job, right? Whatever your job is, a lot of your identity is tied up in doing well there, and you feel a lot of maybe anxiety if you're like me, if you're not doing a good job there and you want to give it all. And like those hours in the night before you go to sleep and your mind is spinning on creative ideas are going to that company probably, and you're being entrepreneurial for them. And that's just where everything that you think of is. But when you start the side hustle, maybe you don't give that time to them anymore. And I think also, like, I think if you're like me, I mean, I don't know. I was working at a company where I was never going to be a partner there, or I was never going to be C-level there. And, okay, I recognize that. And I also it took me a while to just be okay with not giving everything for the job, like not just starting to focus more on what I wanted to do and spending the time on that. And those extra mind cycles were being creative for myself.
Yeah.
And it's a really hard thing to do because I am so programmed to want to be so good and be recognized for being so good at my job and all that stuff. But the interesting thing is once I kind of turned off that switch a little bit at work and then just started really focusing on other stuff that I wanted to do outside, I actually just became way better balanced. Number one, I think in a lot of cases, it doesn't actually matter. Like, I think a lot of jobs don't recognize if you put in just a little bit more effort. Like in consulting, that you would get an annual rating that was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And almost everybody was going to get a 2 or a 3. And then I looked at it and I was like, okay, we work like 80-hour weeks. It's crazy. And the difference between a 2 or a 3 is like, I don't know, a couple $1,000 bonus. Well, like, I don't want to be a 2. I'm not planning on trying to be partner here. I'll just have a normal thing and, not try and take some weeks off and not try to kill myself, because what does that matter? And so, I think just that was a really important step for me, was just learning to maybe not be so crazy about giving it all for a job like that where, I don't know, maybe just don't try to come up with so many ideas and stuff that isn't really necessarily part of your job description, that where if you come up with the idea, you're probably going to have to run with it, And so if you have a side hustle, which I really believe a lot of people can and should, I think you'll find that it just can start bringing you that same kind of validation that you actually get from putting it all into your regular job.
Yeah. Yeah. So Daniel, we touched on purpose and a few different times there, so let's get into that. As you know, I'm on the board of Conscious Capitalism in Los Angeles and work with a lot of purpose-driven CPG brands and just health and wellness brands. So how crucial is purpose in 2024? How important is it for a CPG brand, or even for you guys, to have purpose instilled into the DNA of the company?
I think it's incredibly important. You could be successful with not having some kind of a stated purpose, something that makes the world a better place or shows that you're trying. But I think you have a much better chance of it if you do. So my whole career, I think I've distinguished myself by having some kind of give back or way that, I was just trying to help other people. And it not only was it the right thing to do because I like doing it, I like helping, I like sharing what I'm working on, but in every single instance, it made a huge difference in my personal success and the success of my brands.
And how you feel about it, too, while you're doing it, right?
I think, even when I'm working at other companies, it no matter what crazy shit was happening at the company, I could always hang my hat on, these products are great.
Yeah.
I believe in them. I believe in the impact that we're trying to have in the world. And that kept me some places way longer than I would have stayed there otherwise. And maybe if I can just talk for a second about just how having purpose has helped me in my life and what it's done for me. So for me, it's very natural. It's just part of my DNA. What I do when I'm learning things and I'm excited about them, I like to share with other people. I like to teach other people. It's just really fun for me. And even like going all the way back, my mom just found this funny article in the local Bethesda Gazette from when I was like, I don't know, 14 or 16. And it was Young Computer Whiz Helps Computer Camp with Receipts. And I had basically gone and helped collect receipts at my high school to then go and donate to a underprivileged computer camp, and was able to buy for the kids printers and some computers. And then I went and worked there for the summer.
Yeah.
Fortunately, my school had a requirement for you to go and volunteer somewhere. And it was an amazing experience for me. And I loved just like, even though I was the same age as the kids in that program, because I was a computer nerd. I was on AOL. Like I had learned a lot. I could actually teach them so much. I was teaching them job skills training and all this stuff, but it was just so fun for me. And I don't know why, but something in me just loves getting to teach people stuff that they don't know, that I'm proud to know. And then I got that incredible article out of it. And that article opened up a lot of opportunities to me. I was able to get other internships. And so, later in life, like my first job out of college, I worked for Morningstar, which is an investment research firm in Chicago. When I was there, because that is my second nature, after 3 months, I had the idea to start a saving and investing seminar teaching at a local magnet school. And went in and then just started getting so many people from the company to come in and teach their expertise. We created an interactive stock market simulation game for those high school students. I built that program. It is now still running over 20 years later. It's their flagship community service program. And because of that, I knew the CEO and I knew all the senior fund managers, because I would invite them and they all were like, yeah, I want to come in and can I teach the kids too?
That's awesome.
Everybody bonds around the idea of giving back.
Right.
Nobody was getting paid extra to do this. We weren't making any money from the school. It was just, I think, really good for retention for the company and just something that everybody enjoyed being involved in. And it was good for me too. It really helped me. I had massive connections inside of the company. Nobody else, especially in this management development program, just 3 months out of school, was doing something like this where they would start having all of these connections. And that was one of the major reasons that I was able to get into Wharton Business School, because I did not have the undergraduate requisites to qualify for something like that. But because people can see like, wow, look at this guy who just started this program having such immense impact. This is a leader. This is somebody who cares. And that can really differentiate you with people who can have a huge impact on your career, right? And so I did that there. I did it in a Spanish group. I got 300 people together in Chicago to just practice Spanish, which was really fun for me at the time. And so those were great things to do for people. It's like really a give back thing to do, and just putting a ton of my time into building community and adding value to people and teaching. But oh my gosh, I really then learned again, this also helps me a lot, which I think is great. It really reinforces, I hope people who are out there doing good always get a lot out of it, because it gives them what they need to just keep doing it.
Yeah.
And so, tracing that through later on in life, I would do that when I was in consulting, go back and teach MBAs how to be a consultant. And that distinguished me at the firm. And then starting Startup CPG at the beginning, I just did it because that's my nature. I wanted to get to know people at other companies and be able to help them, because I feel like, I came from Mars Chocolate, a global CPG. I know things that they do that you guys don't do that I can share.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started building this community, and that's what got me the CEO role actually at Machu Picchu, because that distinguished me from a lot of other promising people in the industry who had not been CEOs before. I had not been a CEO before, but I know when the founder looked at my profile and he was considering starting a mission-driven brand, he's like, oh, this guy has that DNA. He has the do-good DNA already. I can see he's doing this successfully, and that's what put me over the edge as a candidate. Again, even in the early days of Startup CPG was making things happen for me personally in my life, just this value that I was trying to provide back to the community for free. And then at Machu Picchu, similar thing. So part of the mission for the company was doing good, helping kids.
Mm-hmm.
We worked with a couple NGOs in Latin America to help kids in slums, like in Rio, called Favela Hachcal, in Lima, Peru, an organization called Alto Peru. And they do incredible work. And, mainly it was about giving financial assistance, which they really need to then fund their programs, and the people who help kids in the slums with outdoor education, really incredible. But in the U.S., it was really important for me to do something personal. And so I created a program teaching kids the fundamentals of how to launch a beverage company. And I would go into the classroom with liquids they could play with, come up with a drink, like pair them in teams, not with their friends randomly, because that's how it happens in the job.
Yeah.
You just work with
Right.
like whoever, not your friends. And so having them experience the creativity and coming up with a product and coming up with a sales strategy and drawing out can designs and just seeing the spark that went off in their eyes. Because I'm not a great classroom learner, like lecture listener. I like more interactive stuff.
Yeah.
And they all just completely switched on. Phones went away. And I've never seen those kids so engaged as when they were doing the liquid development, stuff like that.
That's awesome.
And so that was a joy to me. And I was able to expand that program nationally by working with an organization called NAF, which is a nonprofit that has, they have teachers in thousands of schools across the country in underprivileged, underserved schools. So was able to expand that nationally. So the Do Good program, it meant so much to me to be able to do it. And I loved giving back, and I could just look into the kids' eyes and see the amazing impact that it was having.
Yeah.
But you better believe it propelled the business as well.
Mm-hmm.
And, long before consumers find out about that, because it does take a while to even with like Patagonia or Cotopaxi or Tom's, like, you might hear about their mission, but it's not like the main reason, especially in the early days, that you're picking up the product. But, who does hear about that firsthand is like a grocery buyer, the person who makes the decisions for what products are going to be on the set at Erewhon or at Trader Joe's.
And do they care? Do the buyers care about the mission of your product or the purpose? Yeah.
Some of them do so much. And so even the first buyer who took our product on actually teared up on the phone.
No way.
Us. And because I'm telling her about this program, and I couldn't have predicted this, but she had been through a program like this. And she said, this is what I attribute all of my success to. She was really successful at a much younger age than a lot of her peers. And she's like, someone did this for me. And it meant the world.
Yeah.
And so, and then another buyer that I talked to, like, unfortunately, her daughter had been a teacher and had an accident. And so it was very emotional for her too.
Wow.
Helping kids was our mission. It just so happens is something that so many people are passionate about. It's not partisan. Everyone can kind of agree on it and has some... Like everyone was a kid or has a kid, right? And so buyers were saying yes. One of the biggest distributors in the country put me into this incredible accelerated program with a lot of free distribution and coverage and marketing programs because of it. And then again, like when you can do all of that and then go get impressions on shelves and talk about wins, you can spin that up into the next thing. So, I believe in doing good just to do good, even if you're not going to tell anybody that you did it. But I also want people to know that if you do it, it probably will really help you personally in your career and your business.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Huge proponent of all of that. When we're talking about do good or purpose in CPG brands or other companies, there are so many different categories where this can fall, right? There's sustainability, there's community, there's sort of like conscious culture, there's ethics, transparency. There's so many things, right? And so one of the things that I've found is that you kind of can't do all the things at once, right? You can't, in my opinion, you can't sort of like cure cancer and homelessness and curb global warming, like all at one time, right? So I think that it is important is for founders or companies that are already getting going, is maybe, in my opinion, is to go after one thing that you really are passionate about. And I think that if you try to do all the things, you can easily just not make any money at all. And then you can't move any mission forward. And then you got nothing, right?
Yeah. I mean, maybe there are some examples of people who are...
Well, maybe the Patagonias are right. Once you're big enough, too, I think you can do bigger things.
Yeah.
Right? So,
yeah, probably. And even, I mean, man, some companies have initiatives you wouldn't believe. Google, for example, they have a big food initiative that I completely did not know about.
Is that right?
They have a food lab that they get change makers to come. I was fortunate to join them for stuff. And, they're leading the way on things like zero plastic initiatives, zero single-use plastic. So there are big companies, I think, have more budget. Right. It becomes important to them for different reasons. But I do agree with you on focusing. And I think I also, and, it's so tempting for companies to, for example, maybe they have a mission that's around sustainability, but then also maybe they actually feel really strongly one way or another politically. And I think there's a fine line on those kind of issues where, like, okay, but do you want to make that part of your company platform, which will alienate some consumers and then potentially your impact? maybe it endears you more to your core, who
Right.
like does care about sustainability, does agree with your political views,
Right.
but also could alienate other people. I also think there's a lot of validity to the just approach of like, look, what I'm out here doing is focusing on, like water and people who don't have water. And I don't care if you are Republican or Democrat, if you're pro-choice or pro-life, if you want to help me help people get water,
Sure.
I will work with you.
Yeah.
So I think there is kind of room for that of just like, not letting everything get kind of bundled together. I think that's what we see a lot of the time in politics now, which makes it very hard for people to move bills forward when they're like, well, we can't just make this about the war in Ukraine. We also have to then include like negotiations about the southern border. And then also we need to get some other stuff into it.
That makes it tough because all of a sudden you're putting everything into just two buckets.
Yeah. So, I mean,
there's no gray.
I'm not here to talk about politics, but more just like, it gets complicated.
Sure.
When you like the more stuff you try to weave together. And it's also expensive to try to elaborate on all of those platforms as a small brand. Like, how are you going to actually do all of those things well with a small budget as an early brand? How are you going to focus your content on all of those things? So
absolutely.
I like simplicity.
Yeah.
And, singularity of mission if you can achieve it.
Yeah. And what's interesting, I mean, consumers are definitely resonating with brands that have opinions on things. But I think that there's a fine line of being like, you don't have to have an opinion on every single issue, right? Maybe they're being more vocal about sort of a generalistic opinion about like just against racism in general and be like, okay, that's, maybe a take that you can choose to go out and publicly speak about with your brand or whatever, right? So
and I think it's important to speak up about certain things too, and I hope brands will do the right thing in those scenarios, but with a good understanding of like what is your brand's place in the world.
Exactly. Yeah.
And do consumers even want to hear about this from you? I think it's a good question also.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think the world of brands and consumers and information has changed so much over the past 30 years. I mean, obviously huge in the past 30 years, but obviously in the time of our parents growing up or grandparents, I mean, it was all about being very much just vanilla, no opinion on anything, just stick to the product, right? Like there's no other mission besides just the product, scaling it, making money. And just so that's just changed so much. So every brand has to figure out what that is and what that mission is. Like I said, I don't think you can solve all the problems, or nor should you have an opinion about all the things, but going after one mission really passionately and maybe having an opinion about some things are really could really help your brand and connect with your consumers.
And I'll tell you something that actually was very interesting and surprising to me. When I was at Just Egg, I don't know why, but I kind of got in my head like, I actually wonder, because the CEO there did actually take a big stand against Donald Trump. Like he took out a full page ad in the New York Times, basically saying like, this is, pre his first election, saying like turning away from you is how we show who we are. So that's a big stand for a company to make, right? And, and so, I really respect him for being able to stand up for what he believes in. But then I did do some research about, I wonder if people who are eating more plant-based, for example, are more Democrats, or, what are the differences that I could see across a lot of different things: political beliefs, income, education, family, background. And for something like plant-based or, eating more plant-based stuff, I actually was not seeing a lot of differences. It was really interesting to me that like, I don't know, I had this probably incorrect assumption in my head that maybe like Democrats actually had a higher level of education, more likely to eat plant-based. I don't know. That was just in my mind. I just kind of assumed that. But actually when no, not really. There were so many interesting things getting into the data that I learned. And that wasn't really true. And you don't really even see vast income differences between Democrats and Republicans, or education differences, at least in the data that I was looking through.
Yeah.
Very different people in different cultures and, grown up really different ways. But those kind of big things are not so different.
Speaking of the income thing, I don't know if you saw this viral TikTok, going back to the Erewhon thing. Basically, they interview like 20 different people that are walking out of the Erewhon, and they ask them what do they do and how much they make. And like 80% of them made very low, and low salaries for what LA and or what Erewhon buying should be. it was just so funny. People were going in there and it was like, oh, like they made like, $40K a year, but they were spending, $70 on 2 items in Erewhon. It's just so interesting. And like, you just don't know, right? Like who's going to connect with certain products. They don't necessarily going to come from a certain political or education level or income level.
Okay.
Just kind of going along to what you're saying.
Yeah, but I think a couple important points. One, they're not doing a basket shop there. They're not going and getting their weekly groceries.
No, they were getting like 3 things.
Which, by the way, is what most people do at Erewhon. So if I'm there demoing and I, convince that one person to buy the product, they're like, okay. And they'll like take one and then maybe have it with their sandwich or something. If I'm demoing at my favorite place in the world to demo, which is Central Market in Texas, if I spend those same 2 hours and I take the product, I'm going to sell 200 cans because people are like, what's that? It tastes good. I like you. I'll take 10. So like people kind of museum gift shop at Erewhon and buy like 1 or 2 things. And
I usually just buy like 4 Honey Mamas and get out.
And but what like mental accounting bucket is that going into for you? Is that your grocery budget or maybe I don't know? It feels like
it's a treat.
Yeah,
for me.
Yeah, and like maybe a little bit of your entertainment budget even for people with lower income. Like, oh, that's like an outing that I want to have, and it's something about my identity that I want to be somebody who's shopping there, and I really enjoy that experience. Right.
Right.
So. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's somewhere in between like a grocery budget and like a entertainment dining out budget, something like that, right? And I mean, like who shops at Erewhon and doesn't post about it, right? So maybe there's a little bit of a marketing budget in there for your mental accounting also. So I think there are a lot of reasons, but yeah, I've never seen anyone do a big basket shop there. I actually hosted a CPG Shabbat recently, which we really graciously had some funding for.
Nice.
And so we catered it through Erewhon. And my friend went to pick it up, and he was walking out of Erewhon with about $800 worth of Erewhon.
So like 2 bags.
I was like, yeah. These big trays. I was like, well, dude, I hope you, I don't know, got some phone numbers or something out of that. Because if you walk out of there with that much Erewhon, everybody's going to be like, who is that rich dude? Like, let me know him.
That's hilarious. So Daniel, you're also a musician and you're an entrepreneur. Do you feel like those two can come together at times, using your creativity from being a musician into entrepreneurship or vice versa?
I think the skill sets really help. I think, actually, I'm not a successful musician, but the experience of being a musician is extremely helpful for me. One, I'm very happy, comfortable being on camera, presenting, on stage, improvising, and a lot of that is just from having performed a bunch of times.
Yeah.
And then I think just gives you comfort to engage with people. Like if I give a talk, I'm not talking about anything I've memorized. Like I'm in the moment and I'm talking and I'm asking questions of the audience and getting people in, that's the way I like to learn. Mm-hmm. So, I think I learned that through concerts. And then I think there are a lot of parallels to if you want to have a band that's successful, it is very similar to launching a CPG product.
Interesting.
Like, what do you need to do? You need to first create the product, right? And it's probably a little bit longer of a development phase because you have to spend your whole life like becoming a good musician probably. Or, well, I don't know. These days, if you want to be a DJ, I think you can just take a course, but or watch some YouTube. But, you have to, like, you're creating the product, right? Then you're creating the branding around it. You're creating your identity, the marketing materials, for your band logo, for your album cover. And then, you're starting your marketing and your sales. You're on the phone with venues trying to get some airtime. Yeah. You're trying to, get you're starting marketing to like your core audience. You're trying to build up a core following in the early days, the same way that I'd be out demoing at Erewhon. You're out gigging or busking or whatever you're doing to try to just get early followers. And then, you're hoping to scale. And I think, okay, what's one big difference? Nobody's funding bands, right? Like you don't have angel investors out there or big VCs giving ridiculous valuations to early bands. I wish they were. But yeah, the
dream. Fun to invest in them like stocks though. That would
I would. Yeah, let's start that platform.
Cool. I like that.
I'm in.
Oh shit. That's dope.
Unfortunately, I think you're better off just like buying lottery tickets.
Yeah.
and then buying their albums.
Kind
but
of the same thing.
Yeah, it would be fun. And so, I think a lot of those learnings are very similar. And so, although, I mean, my band was more of a just kind of fun project for me. And unfortunately, once Startup CPG heated up, I couldn't really spend as much time on it. But I did put out an album. You can check it out on Spotify. The band is called Super Fantastics. It's 2 words. You'll see a kind of colorful rainbow logo if you look it up on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And I'm really proud of the album. I put in so much effort into it.
That's awesome,
recording. I re-recorded the vocals like 5 times. I kept getting feedback like I would on a product on it, and just kept getting better, like V1, V2, V3. And finally, I think the most important thing for me is I put out a product that I'll always be proud of. Like a lot of people, you listen to it later and you're so embarrassed. Like, I know I'm probably the person who listens to it the most.
Love that.
You know? And
I love that.
like an art project.
Congrats, man. That's really cool.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm excited to check it out.
Thanks.
Yeah.
But I do believe in general that generalists can be really successful. And I think, most of the founders who I would look at right now as having risen up through the early CPG ranks and distinguishing themselves are not lifetime CPG people. They're people who bring in really different skill sets and lean into those skill sets.
Interesting.
Like find a different way to propel their brand and distinguish themselves as people, and they're cool for one reason or another.
Sure.
Not so. There's no like cookie cutter approach, I think, to doing this.
That's great. Well, in summary, starting a CPG brand is exactly like starting a band.
Yes. Rock on.
No, that's great. And of course, people have all the links in the show notes and all that good stuff for Startup CPG. And there's tons of amazing resources for all kinds of CPG brands, whether they are just starting up or whether they're getting going, because, the startup can mean so many different things nowadays anyway. But before I let you go, Daniel, what are 2 traits that a conscious leader must embody today?
Yeah, I think the first one would just be having a vision and knowing how you could execute it, right? Because, I meet people all the time who, unfortunately, they do have a really strong passion and an ideal that they want to get done, but they just have no idea how to actually build that into a sustainable model. And whether that's nonprofit and you really know where you're going to go out and get the funding and then start gathering people around your cause to support it, or it's a business and you really understand where the revenue is going to come from, right? And so I think, being a conscious leader, I think the first thing comes from like having that self-consciousness and consciousness about the business to know, well, this can only have the impact that I want it to have in the world if I'm going to be successful. And I at least, even if I don't know everything and I haven't done this before, I do understand how it could be and where the money could come from. And then I'm going to tap in to my network and be resourceful, which I would say I think is a really good second trait, just resourcefulness, to go out there because, nobody has all the answers. There's incredible power in the community and people who have done it before. And I don't mean like lofty people who did it 20 years ago and will try to like get some equity from you. I mean people who are doing it right now, and talk to them and they will help you and really spend time with them. And the learnings that you'll get from them can make all the difference in the world. So I think just having that muscle memory to pick up the phone and call people for help and to just put the ask out there, like having the confidence to just, gosh, wouldn't it be great if they could do this one thing for me? Like ask them. I learned that early on. Like if you have some crazy thing, like, gosh, it would be a dream come true if you could do this, actually ask the person. And I find that maybe 60% of the time they're like, oh yeah, we could do that.
That's crazy.
Right. And I learned also to couch it for just like, hey, maybe this is a lot to ask, but just dream state. At least I learned. So then if they said no, I wouldn't sound like a lunatic or like I didn't know what I was doing. But I don't know. It's a great question. I think those are probably just 2 of the many things that I take. And the third being the grit of just, you need to know that you will be working on this for a long time. It's not going to be easy. It will take everything. It'll take your whole heart and all of your passion, and it will use you up. And it's only going to work is if you love sitting down at your computer on a Saturday and just churning like the whole day to give your business a better chance of success. There is no easy way to do this that I know of.
Love that, man. Well, you truly are a conscious leader, Daniel. So keep doing what you're doing. Keep building an awesome community that's giving tons of value. So really amazing that what you're doing. So keep doing you, brother.
Thank you
for being on.
Thank you so much. And if anybody's interested to check us out on the web, we're startupcpg.com. We have a great Instagram as well, Startup CPG. And if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, I love connecting with new people, and you can just find me there under Daniel Scharff.
We'll include all the links in the show notes as well. So thanks.
Awesome.
Thanks again for being on, brother.
Thank you, Sebastian.
Thank you.
Hey guys, I really hope you enjoyed that episode. It takes a lot to put these things together, but I truly love doing it. If you enjoyed this episode or the show in general, and you listen to it on audio podcast, please take some time to give it a review. It would really mean a lot to me. And if you watch the video, please go ahead and just click subscribe and share it with somebody that you think would like it. It would really mean the world to me, and it helps keep the show alive. Visit sebastiannaum.com for more content and follow me on Instagram at sebnaum. That's SEBNAUM. Thanks again for spending your time with me. I know it is valuable. I hope you have a great rest of the day and week. Till next time.